Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. Now for today's review is going to be about Better Call Saul, the prequel essentially to Breaking Bad. So let's get in. So when it comes to Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, that the whole Breaking Bad universe essentially, I was one of those that didn't get into it until maybe like around season 4 of Breaking Bad, and then I just watched it all back in 2019 when the El Camino movie came out. So I never really watched Better Call Saul until maybe I would say during the pandemic. I saw it on Netflix and started binge watching it, and I'll let you know what my thoughts are and what my opinions are from season by season, from season 1 all the way up until season 6. And since season 6 just ended last month, so the whole Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul universe is completely finished. So let's get into it here. So with Better Call Saul, it's basically set from 2002 to 2008. There is some scenes of like flash forward of like what happened after the finale of Breaking Bad and like what's going on in Saul's future after Breaking Bad. But then most of the series, it's set from like that 6-year period before Breaking Bad has started. So bear in mind too, this is going to be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the show, if you haven't seen any of the seasons, this is your spoiler warning. I would definitely go ahead and watch the show, finish the show if you're in the middle of it, and come back to the review to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. There's going to be timestamps in the description of each season. If you have a particular interest in a certain season, the timestamps are going to be in the description down below here. So when it comes to like season 1, it's like a very, I would say, slow burner season. It's more of like introduction to Saul, who is known as Jimmy McGill. That's his real name. The entire show, it opens up with Saul. It opens up with Saul in the future, as I mentioned, after Breaking Bad. So you have Saul being known as Gene, who now is like a manager working at a Cinnabon inside like a mall. So you get to see like what happened with him after Breaking Bad and like how he escaped and like what his life is. So I really like the opening sequence because it straight away ties it into Breaking Bad and the whole Breaking Bad universe. So the first like episode, you get in the introduction to like Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman. You get introduced to like his life, him with his brother Chuck, and basically Chuck's got a condition where he needs like he's allergic to like electricity essentially. So you see like Jimmy looking after his brother Chuck. You get an introduction to like Howard, who's Chuck's partner, and who you see like the backstory, you see the history between Jimmy or Saul, Chuck and Howard. So the season is essentially setting up the backstory and the plot and the history of Jimmy, Chuck, Howard. You get introduced very early on in the very first episode. Towards the end of the first episode, you get introduced to some Breaking Bad characters like Tuco. He gets introduced right off from the off, so you know you're in for a good show and for a good season, because I loved his character in Breaking Bad. So Jimmy basically starts off as a public defender who is defending a couple of morons, let's say, and they run into a relative from Tuco, and that's how Jimmy/Saul gets involved in that. And you get introduced to Nacho, who I loved his character throughout the whole show. His development in the show from season 1 to season 6 was so great, and he is such a standout character. You get introduced to him working with the Salamancas, you see his involvement preventing Tuco from like killing Jimmy, from killing those two idiots that were with Jimmy. You see like Nacho's sort of personality, how he is in terms of the Salamanca, and then you have Tuco, who's like a psychopath. So it's in terms of like the build up for the season, like a lot of like the episodes is kind of slow, but there is a lot of like interesting plots and great storyline going on throughout the show. You get to see Mike also returning, so he hasn't really developed into what he is in Breaking Bad, but you see his relationship with Jimmy because he's basically working in the courthouse parking lot. So you see Jimmy's relationship with Mike and getting advice from each other. So very early on you see like the Breaking Bad universe, these characters like interacting with each other, developing that plot and relationship with one another. And what I like is how things tie into like Breaking Bad. So nothing in terms of continuity is sort of broken in this aspect. Like for example, Mike, you get to see like a little plot for him. You understand where he's coming from and how he became who he is in Breaking Bad, because you get to see the backstory of him, how his son was a cop but got killed because they thought he was a dodgy cop even though he was actually a good cop. And you see what Mike did to the cops that actually killed his son, and like his relationship with his daughter-in-law, his relationship with his granddaughter. You get to see like that close-knit and the backstory of Mike, which was never really like introduced in Breaking Bad. That's what I really enjoyed, because in Breaking Bad it's focusing on a lot on Walter, on Jesse, like their family, Hank, and like you get to see behind the scenes of that, but you don't really get to see behind the scenes of like Mike and like what happened to him, or the history of like Saul and how he became who he is. So this is what I enjoy about this prequel, is it gains your attention very early on and you're very invested in these characters because of like the history of their characters in Breaking Bad, but just what they do throughout the season and throughout the show. For example, with Mike, and you learn how he got into the game essentially, with him helping this like this man called Daniel, I believe it is, who's just very out of touch with the game, basically trying to sell his drugs, trying to sell his Jeep. Just he needs Mike basically, but it's great to see Mike developing into the character he is. And with that itself, you get to be introduced to Nacho and Mike's relationship, since Nacho's the one buying drugs from that Daniel person that is the bodyguard of Mike essentially. So you get to see that relationship going, and it's just every little bit of it was really great to watch. It was really developed well. The story arcs and the plots you would get to enjoy. The only like negative I would say is, like I said, it's very slow. So like a lot of heavy lawyer plots. It's sort of like a lawyer show basically, so not a lot of things happen in terms of the drug aspect, if that makes sense. It's more based on like Jimmy, the lawyer stuff. You get introduced to Kim's character as well, as I mentioned, Chuck, Howard, what's going on there. Jimmy working as like a public defender lawyer. He's finds a case for the elderly with like a company called Sandpiper, and trying to like help the elderly. And you have like what's going on with Kim, you have what's going on with Chuck. So it's just a lot of like that storyline focus rather than the drugs aspect side of it. But I still found season 1 was great. It did take me a while to complete season 1 just because of how I found it slow. It's like you have season 5 of Breaking Bad and like what happens in season 5 and just everything going on there, to then season 1 of Better Call Saul. It's like such a drastic like change of pace. Not to say that's a bad thing, but like once you go from season 5 of Breaking Bad to season 1 of Better Call Saul, you kind of like have to sit there and slow down and just absorb everything that you're watching basically. But not to say it's a bad season. I really enjoyed season 1 because I do like lawyer shows, so season 1 is definitely a great start to the prequel. So now when it comes to season 2 is when it really like picks up in terms of like the lawyer storyline. It kind of really picks up because you have the 4 main characters in terms of the lawyer aspect. You've got Kim, you've got Howard, you've got Chuck, and you've got Jimmy. You really start to see the relationship between Jimmy and Kim develop. You see like what's going on with them there. You see how they help each other out. You sort of see the Saul Goodman personality side of it. He's known as like Slippin' Jimmy, so you get to see more of that being developed, and like Kim sees that side of it. And then you get to see more of the relationship between Chuck and Jimmy, like that brother relationship, why Jimmy despises Chuck at times, and like why Jimmy's so angry with Chuck at times. You see Chuck's hatred for Jimmy, thinking that he shouldn't have been a lawyer, and always trying to like sabotage him, always trying to like put him down. You see as to the reason as to why like Chuck is the reason why Jimmy doesn't work with like Howard and Chuck in that company. So you see all of that being more developed, and you get that interest and investment into those like characters and into that storyline, like the main focus, because you have Kim who helped out Jimmy, because with Kim you see her like helping out Jimmy. Jimmy's doing little things behind the scenes that he shouldn't be doing, for example running ads on TV without permission from the firm that he's working with. You see Kim helping him out, but then her suffering the consequence and having to work in like the copier room and like just filing and just working on files downstairs, not really getting involved with then Jimmy like helping her, and like you see that connection and the camaraderie between the two of them, and that starts developing. They start having a stronger relationship, a stronger bond. And then, as I mentioned, with Chuck and with Jimmy, you get to see that relationship brewing. And this is one of the aspects that I really liked about this prequel, is the relationship between Chuck and Jimmy. You see both sides of the story, you see where both sides are coming from. So you can't really like, for me, I couldn't hate Chuck too much. As much as I despise some of his actions that he takes, I understand where he's coming from, because you have like the backstory, because it shows some flashbacks as well of Jimmy as like a kid, Jimmy in his like younger years. So you kind of like see his hesitation, because in his eyes Jimmy is always going to be known as Slippin' Jimmy, always running cons and that kind of stuff. And then we're introduced to the whole Mesa Verde case. Kim finds Mesa Verde and she wants to like represent them. She introduces them to Howard, thinking that like it's going to get her in the good books, but then it turns into like Howard versus Kim trying to take on Mesa Verde, because Kim now wants to like leave HHM, Howard's firm basically. And at first she gets the backing of Chuck, then it turns into this whole mess where like Chuck makes Kim look bad, Kim trying to take on Howard, trying to like help be her own person. Jimmy then gets involved, and like, so it's just, you have these people going to war with each other, trying to like outwit each other, outdo each other. And because of like the relationship you see get developed between Kim and Jimmy throughout the season, they start working together, because Chuck basically uses his intelligence to win Mesa Verde and become like their representatives. So then Kim and Jimmy start setting up plot to basically trick Chuck into making a mistake. They steal his like files, and they like basically manipulate it, sabotage it to make him look crazy, so that when he does go like into a meeting with Mesa Verde and they correct him on a certain like aspect of like the work he's doing, he goes crazy and gets irritated because of his ego. And so then he loses Mesa Verde and Kim wins it. And this is what Jimmy does for Kim, because of like that relationship and that bond. He gets Mesa Verde to side with Kim, making Chuck look crazy in making him look unreliable. So it was a really nice like lawyer storyline. It was really fun to watch, and it was really good because of the way it was developed throughout the show. And then when it comes to like the finale of the show, the ending of season 2, you see Chuck's intelligence. You see, because he knows Jimmy so well, he knows it was Jimmy that messed with his work and made him look crazy and made him lose Mesa Verde. He knows how to manipulate Jimmy. He knows how to like make him feel bad, and he does that. He makes him feel guilty, and he gets a confession out of him, not knowing that Chuck recorded him, but he gets that confession out of Jimmy because that's how well Chuck knows him. So it was really nice, and you can tell it's going to set up for something really great in season 3. But also in season 2 here, you have Mike's storyline, Mike and Nacho's storyline, because now that Mike's into the game, essentially, Nacho wants his help to get rid of the Salamancas. He wants to get rid of Hector Salamanca because of how crazy Hector is, and how Hector wants to get Nacho's father involved in this scenes of these drug scenes. But you see with Mike and the early build up to it, because of what happens in later seasons, Nacho wants to kill Tuco, but Mike doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to pull that trigger. So instead he gets Tuco arrested by like messing with him and getting Tuco to beat him up essentially in front of the police. So Tuco gets arrested. This causes Hector Salamanca to take notice of Mike and start. At first he tries to intimidate Mike. He tries to get him to like retract his statement to get Tuco out, but then when Mike doesn't do it, he tries to play like the intimidation game, uses the twins to try and intimidate him, threaten his family. And also you get to see Mike stand up for himself. You get to see Mike not fall for the pressure of the Salamancas, because what he does instead is he starts messing with their business. He starts interrupting their business flow and starts playing with like their business essentially. And so what happens in terms of this is that Hector Salamanca offers him money to like retract his statements, but what Mike does is he wants more money to like of course help his family. So, and once again, see that development between Mike and Nacho's relationship start building slowly. But once again, like as similar in season 1 to season 2, you don't get much in terms of like action and suspense and that kind of stuff. It's more of just like slowly building the plot, the story arcs. You get that built up story developing throughout the show, and it continues on to season 3. So in terms of season 2, I once again enjoyed it. I really liked it because it really like accelerated the storyline, the plot of what happened in season 1 between the lawyers aspect. And also I really loved just seeing Mike and like Mike taking on the Salamancas. So season 2 was such an enjoyable season. It is a great season. Season 1 a little bit slow. Season 2 picks up the pace a little bit, and you get more like interactions and more intensified scenes with like consequences and more history between characters and interactions. So I really feel like season 2 was a great follow-up to season 1. It's definitely a great season, I would say. But we'll move on to season 3 here. So with season 3 now, it really starts like accelerating, starts pushing the storylines, and you start getting like the good Breaking Bad stuff of it, because you start getting introduced to all the characters now. We'll start off with the Mike storyline. Mike's really like intensifying his feud with Hector Salamanca. He starts getting Hector's people arrested across the border with the drivers. So he's really messing with their business and interfering with the business itself. He starts gaining attraction from a certain Gus Fring, who, with Mike's cleverness, Mike's intuitions, he knows he's being tracked, because there was one point in the scene where Mike was ready to like kill Hector Salamanca, and his car starts going off. There's a note on there. He notices that there's something on his car, and he starts tracking the people that's tracking him, only to find out that it was Gus Fring's people tracking him. So you get introduced to the people from like Breaking Bad that used to work with Gus. You get to see Gus Fring's henchmen, you get to see Victor, you get to see Tyrese. People from the Breaking Bad universe start reprising their roles more and like start having more scenes. So you get to see how Mike gets recruited to Gus Fring's operation, how Gus doesn't want Mike to kill Hector, but he wants him to work for him. So you get to see this build up to what we see in Breaking Bad with everybody in Gus Fring's operation, the laundromat, all of that kind of stuff starts slowly being introduced. So it was really fun to watch all of that. You get to see how it all started, compared to like in Breaking Bad, you already see everything being established. This is how everybody is introduced to Gus Fring's circle and how he runs the operation. You also get to see like Nacho's side, like Nacho's being more developed now. He's starting to take on the Salamancas in secret, wanting to like manipulate and try and ruin Salamancas. He uses that Daniel guy from season 1 to like help him with the medicine, because because he steals Hector Salamanca's medicine, replaces them, and that's what we find out is the reason why he was in a wheelchair in Breaking Bad. Is all because of Nacho. I loved that aspect of that show. I loved the aspect of like an inside man causing Hector Salamanca to be in the wheelchair. So I really loved what they did, and it's all because of Nacho's good heart, because they want his father to get involved. They try to set up his father. He's trying to like protect his family, protect his father. So you get where he's coming from, and he's like not a bad person. He's just in the wrong crowd, and he's trying to do good by his father. So I loved that. I loved what they did with Nacho's character and how it was built up, and we see the consequence of that. But the main talking point of season 3, where you've got all that aspect, is the showdown between Chuck versus Jimmy. Once Jimmy finds out that Chuck recorded him he plays right into Chuck's hand. He goes into the house, he destroys the recorder tape right in front of Howard and a private investigator, giving Chuck the ammunition he needs. He basically wants to get Jimmy disbarred from becoming a lawyer. He doesn't want him being a lawyer. So he goes through so much extreme methods to try and get that. And then you have Kim, who's got Jimmy's back, taking on Chuck basically in court. So then you've got this storyline between Chuck versus Jimmy, the court sentences, the court hearings, I loved those scenes because you really see Jimmy and Slip in Jimmy's methods and what he does to try and pull one over on Chuck. You get to see Huel back. I love Huel. He's such a great character and such a fun character. You get to see him being involved with like Jimmy, and then you see Jimmy's manipulation, how he manages to convince the court that Chuck's health condition is essentially a lie because he puts a phone battery in his pocket for, I forgot how long it was, but then it basically shows that Chuck's hasn't got hypersensitivity to electricity or magnets or anything like that. So it made Chuck look really bad. So you get to see like Chuck just go at it with everybody in the courtroom. You get to see his true like nature essentially. So it was really great to see that whole storyline from Chuck versus Jimmy just played so well throughout the show. It was hard to watch because it could have been so avoided, because all Jimmy wanted was just Chuck's approval, but Chuck's hatred for like Jimmy becoming a lawyer just took over, and you see the consequence of that at the end of the show, at the end of the season, because of like what happened in the court and the outcome of it. Chuck's just so disheveled and broken from that, and so eventually towards the end of the season you see him kicking a lamp and it causing the house to burn up in flames, causing him to just pass away. And it was just such a heartbreaking end to the season, such a heartbreaking end to the relationship, because it, like I said, it could have just been so avoided. But from season 1 to season 3, you just feel like it was just coming to a clash, and it was heartbreaking to watch. I really liked Chuck. I really liked his intelligence, his wittiness, his like craziness, because of like his thoughts about him being so hypersensitive to everything. He was a fun character, and his relationship between Jimmy, it was really great to watch. It was really nice to see like that side of Jimmy, that side of Saul Goodman, and like knowing that he had a brother, knowing what happened to him, how he affected him too. I thought was thoroughly enjoyable. So season 3 definitely is a huge step up from season 1 and season 2, and it was really, really fun to watch, and it was such an enjoyable show. And that's when it really starts picking up. Like this prequel really starts stepping up a gear now when you get to season 4. So now in season 4 you have essentially Jimmy, who's not disbarred, but his license is suspended because of everything that happened in the previous season. So he's essentially working in a phone shop, and he's trying to sell phones to people, trying to do the Slip and Jimmy con, but he gets bored of it. He wants out. He's trying to find like different things to do. You start seeing that Saul Goodman side of him now, how he's becoming Saul Goodman, what he's trying to do, like his little cons here and there. Because for example, there's a plot line with Huel getting arrested, and so he works with Kim to try and like do some little cons to try and help Huel. He makes a fake website, fake letters, all in support of Huel because of like where Huel is like from, where he was born and raised. So they pretend like all these letters are coming from Huel's supporters, website dedicating to him, all that kind of stuff to try and get Huel off, which makes Huel so happy. It's fun watching Huel on TV. He's such a great character. He's such a great side character. His scenes are so fun to watch. So you get all of that, and so that in turn links with Kim now, Kim's basically bored of Mesa Verde. She wants out. She wants to like work pro bono cases. She's in the court a lot of the times in this season, wanting to like help the little guy. Seeing Jimmy like what he's doing and how he's like getting this Saul Goodman character in him now, she now wants to try and be part of that, try and like work towards like lawyer stuff more than like the Mesa Verde stuff. So you start getting that storyline between Kim and like what she gets up to throughout the season. But for me, what was the most exciting part of season 4 is the storyline with the laundromat, you start seeing how the lab that Walter and Jesse worked in, how it starts getting built. You see like what goes down there. You see Mike's storyline, like at beginning of the show, beginning of the season, Mike is so like focused and determined to try and be now that he starts working for Gus, he wants to be on top of everything. He's working in like this warehouse, doing security checks, making sure everybody's punctual, making sure the money that's being laundered is going on top of things. He's just very like overprotective and like down to the wire with everything, having Gus to try and get him to like ease off, just to relax and like let Gus and like his people do the work. But you just see like Mike's mindset, how he works, how his mind runs, and then from there giving him that project of like having Mike look after the Germans who are building the underground like lab for Gus. I loved the storyline. I loved like what they did with that, because you just start seeing Mike getting close to these people, the main leader of like these Germans. You start seeing him Mike developing that friendship with him, even going to so far as to like having a more comfortable like living facility for them, taking them to even like strip clubs and that kind of stuff, really building the rapport with them. And it was just so nice to see and so fun to watch. But then eventually it coming crashing and burning, essentially, because once like you get to the latter part of the season, you get introduced to Lalo, who is one of the best characters in the Better Call Saul prequel. Tony Dalton, who plays Lalo, is such an amazing actor. He's that smile, he like is crazy, but you just like, he's just lovable to like watch. The way he talks to people, the way he like acts, his personality is just so great to see. It bounces off the screen, and he was such a great introduction to the show. He was such a breath of fresh air. So like once he starts getting introduced, trying to like work with Hector, now that Hector's in the wheelchair, giving him the belt to try and like communicate with him and try and find what's going on, protecting the Salamancas, getting involved with Gus, getting involved with like that operation, trying to find out what they're up to. It was really fun to see, because then it really picks up towards the end of the show when he like finds like a money wiring place where this German like is, because he wants to be with his family, he wants to be with his wife and daughter, since he misses them so much because he's been away for so long. You see Lalo get involved in that. You see Mike having to like do what Gus needs and like kill the German for like escaping, basically, and like escaping the facility. Lalo's craziness, but just killing the worker that works in that money wiring place, and then Mike having to do what he doesn't want to do, and like having to kill his friend, because earlier on he couldn't kill Tuco, he couldn't kill anybody, but now he has to kill somebody that he actually developed a friendship with. It was just gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching, and this is what the writers do so well. They develop a character, they develop a storyline, they make you care so much about it, and it's so heartbreaking to see what Mike has to go through and what Mike does throughout the whole season, developing friendship to then having to be the one that has to pull that trigger. I loved like everything about that in season 4. Season 4 was really heavy focused on that, and it really made for such a great season. You get to see Saul Goodman slowly starting to be developed. You get to see Lalo getting introduced. You get to see now Mike and Gus and everything that you know from Breaking Bad, to how it was developed and started here. So season 4 definitely gets picked up, and it's such a great season. That all now builds up as you start getting it slowly towards season 5, season 6 in the Breaking Bad universe. Now is when it's like gets introduced to all of that. So let's discuss season 5. Now with season 5, everything picks up. Like, you fully embrace the Saul Goodman character now. Like, Jimmy has fully embraced Saul Goodman, and so you get to see that whole side of him now. There's so much plot line, so much storyline going on throughout season 5. So we'll start off with Kim's character and Kim's storyline, because she's still with Mesa Verde, and now it's like working with them because of the plot line going on with like there's an old man in like a specific area that won't leave his house, so they need him to leave the house to build this call center there. So Kim is trying to like reason with him, even going so far as to like visiting him in the middle of the night to show him properties that he can move to, show him like different areas that he can go to and live in, and trying to just gain that trust. But because he's so stubborn and he doesn't want to leave, that she has to get Jimmy/Saul involved because she's fed up with Mesa Verde, and she wants to also help the old man. So Saul, using his Saul Goodman methods, his Slip and Jimmy methods, represents this old man, and finds out that like the horse picture, like the logo that they have, is actually like a copyright. So he uses his tactics to try and like win the case. He uses that to his advantage. He tries to take on Mesa Verde and this whole plotline, and Kim's like furious because that's not what she wanted him to do. So with that whole plotline and that storyline, it eventually leads to like Kim so furious that those two get married. So Kim and Jimmy, or Kim and Saul, get married, and they become like husband and wife. So it's really nice because of like how it was developed from season 1 to now, their relationship, how they always have each other's back, how they like help each other, how you see Kim, like she sees what Jimmy becomes, how he becomes to Saul, and she sees all of that. She still wants to marry him. So it was a great little like plot there. And then you also have like Saul, as I said, fully embracing that Saul Goodman character. But then because of like what happened, and I didn't really touch upon that in season 4, but because of what happened to Chuck, like Jimmy's like, he feels guilty, but then he blames Howard for everything that happened with Chuck. But he, like, you don't see the side of him where he's like gutted, or like he kind of like moves on really quickly about it. But then in this season you have the storyline where like Howard offers Jimmy or Saul, a position at HHM, but Saul's so insulted by this, he starts messing with Howard throughout the show. He starts throwing bowling balls at his car, hires prostitutes to go to like Howard's lunch dinners and that kind of stuff. It's just funny to watch like how insulted he was with that offer, that he goes so far into like messing with Howard's like life. And it was funny to see because of like all over just a simple like job offer. I get where Saul's coming from because of everything from like what happened between them in the history of everything, but it was just funny to watch because it's just, you see it's so extreme, like the measures that Saul goes through because of just one offer. So you have that aspect of the show, and then the drug aspect of it. So you essentially, after everything that happened in season 4, Mike is now depressed. He's very upset because of what happened, what he had to do. He starts snapping at his granddaughter because she asks a few too many questions. He gets into fights. He's gone like off the rails. So when he does get into a fight and he like gets severely injured, he's taken to this exclusive like place to recover, and Gus essentially like shows him this place that he's at, tells him that he needs him. So it's really nice to see like how Mike is developed. I loved what they did with Mike in this show, from like, as I mentioned, from being just like the toll booth car person from season 1 to eventually getting into the game, becoming a bodyguard, to working with Nacho, to now working with Gus, to just feeling the consequence of like his actions. He has a great storyline where he has to overcome that depression, has to overcome the remorse because he killed essentially his friend that he developed over season 4. It was really nice to see because Gus really needs Mike, because Lalo's involvement now, Lalo's getting closer and closer to finding out what's going on, to try and avenge Hector Salamanca, to try and basically turn Gus with the higher ups in the drug cartel. So he needs to get all the information, and you can tell Lalo's getting close. He's like using Nacho to try and find out what's going on, asking questions. And so Gus really needs Mike, because you have Mike, Gus and Nacho trying to work together. They get Lalo arrested because of the whole murder that happened with the wire clerk in season 4. But what makes Lalo so clever is that he can use Saul, because earlier on Saul helped Lalo get Crazy 8, who also made an appearance in this show. He helps him get out of like prison, so he knows his tactics and what to use. So he gets Saul to help him get out, even though they set a $7 million bail for Lalo. He has that money. He says, no problem, I can pay that. And so you get to the scenes with Saul in a desert taking on $7 million across the desert to try and get it to Lalo. And like what happens in the whole like and like what happens in the episode, like you think that Jimmy's gonna like die even though he's got plot armor because of Breaking Bad. Like the shootout and Mike randomly just saving Jimmy, shooting all these people, and then that you have Saul and Mike walking in a desert with $7 million. It was a great episode, a great plot there, and I really enjoyed the interactions. Like Mike and Jimmy's relationship and their interactions and their scenes are really great scenes. They're award-winning scenes. Like it's just the interactions, the conversations that they have, like having Mike help him get through the desert, get the money to Lalo, and then Lalo wanting to find out more. He's always asking questions. He wants to know what happened in the desert, how Jimmy was able to like escape these like people with like the guns and stuff like that. So you get one of the most epic scenes in the Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad like universe, when you have Kim confronting Lalo. That scene is such an amazing scene. Kim's character, Lalo's character, like the two people that play them, made such an amazing scene with that. Like the wording, the emotion, the drama. That was one of the best scenes to watch. Kim killed it in that scene. It really was great. And then you have it then move on to the finale, essentially the finale of like the season itself. You have now Gus and Mike hiring people to take out Lalo, because Lalo and Nacho are now into like Lalo's relative's house, just relaxing there. And so you have Nacho fully like, because I forgot to mention, like Gus hires Nacho to work with him after he finds out that he messed with Hector Salamanca's drugs. So Gus knew what Nacho did, so now Nacho works for them. So then in the finale you have Nacho opening up a gate to allow all these like assassins that Gus and Mike have hired to kill Lalo, and it just makes for such a great intense finale, a great sequence, a great battle. You have Lalo taking on these like people. You see how Lalo uses what's at his disposal to kill these people. You see how he escapes. You get that intensity, you get that ferociousness from him. It made such an amazing and such a tense finale. Like I loved what they did with that finale. I loved how Lalo was able to escape, and it really built your suspense and your tension for the finale of Breaking Bad, the final season of Breaking Bad. Because of what happened in that finale, it just made such great TV that you are excited to see what comes, because now that he knows Nacho is the one that ratted him out, you get to see what happens in season 6. So season 5 was such an amazing season, and probably one of my favorite seasons of like Better Call Saul. But let's get on to the final season of Better Call Saul here. So with season 6, you have it split into 2 parts. I loved the first part of season 6, because now you have the consequences of what happened in season 5. You have people looking for Nacho because of his betrayal, and so you see the first couple of episodes, you see Lalo speaking with like Hector, knowing that Gus is behind it and trying to find evidence to do that. So Lalo goes into hiding and tries to like find his like information so that he can expose Gus. And then you have Nacho trying to hide, Nacho trying to like work with Mike, work with Gus to try and bring him back to their people. But first couple of episodes with like what Nacho does, how you have basically Nacho hiding in this tank cylinder thing under the oil, the way he emerges, and then you eventually, once he does get back to like Mike and Gus, he basically knows his fate. And so fast forward, you basically have him be confronted by the Salamancas with like Gus and everybody, like the whole cartel there, and you just get this epic dialogue. Like before all of that happens, I really loved like the scenes between him calling his father just to like talk to him, because you kind of can see what's going to happen to Nacho. But that scene, like that phone call he had with his father, was really heartbreaking and really emotional to like see. So then you fast forward and you see that confrontation, like his final words, what he says, and his emotions and his voice change in the eyes. It really made for such a great exit to the show. It was the best way to go out, I would say, when he takes a gun and shoots himself after what he said to the Salamancas. It was amazing. I loved that scene. Gutted that they killed him off, but it was such a great way to go. Nacho's character was really well developed. You've had such high hopes that he was going to survive, but it was just a great character development, a great story arc from season 1 to season 6. I loved what they did with him, and it was really great to see. And then you see Lalo getting, like, he's goes to Germany, finds the wife of the person that Mike killed. He finds something that like links it towards the laundromat, so he has that information. He finds the laundromat. He knows, like, he has all the information he needs. So it then makes into a chilling entrance and a chilling scene when he enters Jimmy and Kim's apartment, basically. But when it comes to like Jimmy and Kim, I felt like in terms of this season, like the storyline they had, like it was more of like focused on trying to mess with Howard. They spent the season pulling pranks on him, building up to this great prank that they're going to pull on him. They have like Jimmy putting on makeup, looking like Howard, kicking a hooker out of a car in front of like his partners, planting like cocaine in his lockers, that kind of stuff. So it just felt like the season, when it comes to like Howard's storyline with like Kim and Jimmy, what happens to Howard just felt like this whole thing could have been, I don't know, like better developed, because I get what they did. And like for me, when you link it all together, because for me, when what happened to Howard when you've got that chilling entrance from Lalo, because Howard comes to confront Kim and Jimmy in their apartment because of what they're doing to him, and then when you have Lalo coming in and just shooting Howard in the head, I was shocked. My jaw dropped when I saw that. I couldn't believe it. So then I guess it was what the writers wanted. I was so heartbroken to what they did with Howard throughout the season, and how like he was viewed by everyone, to then having that be his fate. That was really heartbreaking. But I just felt like they could have spent a couple of episodes on that plotline and then do something different, rather than spend the whole first half of the show on that specific plotline with Jimmy and Kim and Howard. But then you get the epic conclusion to basically this part 1 of season 6. You have Lalo forcing Kim to now basically go and kill Gus. You don't know what's going to happen because Saul wants to do it, but you know what happens to Saul because of Breaking Bad. You don't know what happens to Lalo or Kim or any of like these characters because you don't know what, because they're not in Breaking Bad. So Kim now has to go to Gus to try and like kill him as per the request of Lalo. Lalo doesn't waste any time. He ties up Jimmy next to a dead Howard in his own apartment and goes to the laundromat to try and get the evidence. And then you have this epic conclusion between Gus and Lalo. Gus recording, Lalo showing the proof, and then Gus using his own facility against Lalo, turning off the lights, shooting him, killing Lalo. And I just found it so intense and so epic. It was a great episode. It was really intense. Kim's interaction with Gus and Mike and their people, having Jimmy just lay there next to a dead Howard, Gus versus Lalo. It was just so great. It's great TV. It was great to watch. It was a great episode. And so all because of that, everything that happened, the consequence of that leads to then Howard, the funeral with Howard and his wife still fighting for Howard's case, knowing that he didn't do drugs, and Kim and Jimmy are just so far gone that they still put up this charade that he did do it, and Kim telling this ridiculous story about Howard. but because of like everything, now knowing that when Jesse and Walt were cooking meth in the lab, they did it with Howard and Lalo buried underneath them. That is just insane. That is really insane to like think about. But all because of all of this, Kim finally says that she can't do this and she leaves Jimmy, and it was such a heartbreaking scene seeing them finally separate. And then you have that time jump of like Jimmy becoming a full Saul Goodman character, fully embracing it, fully becoming Saul Goodman, and like we see him in the Breaking Bad timeline now. So then that's when you get to part 2. Because for me, I know like the Lalo death, all that conclusion was technically in part 2, but for me I like split it up because all the like future episodes, all the episodes in black and white, I kind of felt like it was a bit not unnecessary, but it just felt a bit flat for me, because throughout season 1 to season 5, you have these little scenes here and there, or flash forward scenes of Jimmy becoming Gene, working in the Cinnabon, but getting recognized here and there. So then these like next 3 episodes, I believe it was, just focusing on like Jimmy playing as Gene, putting himself into an old lady, Marion's life, who is also the person that recognized him in a mall. Jeff is related to her, so you have Jeff is the person who recognized him in the mall, related to this Marion character. And so essentially Jimmy slash Gene takes this Jeff character and his friend under his wing, doing these little like slipping Jimmy cons in like in a shop, getting these guys drunk and taking their like credit information and all that kind of stuff. But it just like, it felt like that could have all been done in like under 1 episode or something like that, because then you have another episode where it shows Kim what she's been up to since all of this, her flash forward, like her feeling the guilt and feeling all of that emotion built up, to then finally confessing to Howard's wife about what she did. And you know that confession is going to lead to something, because eventually that Marion character finally recognizes Saul for who he is and calls the police on him, which leads to the finale and the final episode. And now we get on to the finale of the whole show, the final episode. And so the police are now after Saul slash Gene slash Jimmy. They're after him, they capture him, and he's basically does what he does best. He manages to convince them to get his sentence down to 7 years for all the crimes he's committed. He manages to get his sentence down to 7 years, only to then eventually later on, once he gets onto the plane and all that kind of stuff, talks himself out of getting that. Because there's some nice little scenes during the finale when you have Marie, Hank's wife or widow, now confronting Saul about Hank and everything that he's done, and him using Walter as his excuse as to why he did what he had to do, because he felt scared, because he felt like that there was no other way, which I really liked. I liked everything about the finale. And so once he does finally get to like the court, because he tries to use Howard Hammond as his like final straw to like rescue himself, only to find out that Kim actually already used that. And so he even brings Kim down to the courtroom, because basically she thinks that he's gonna do something to like ruin her life. So she's there, and him standing there to eventually like talking, confessing, just being genuine, being Jimmy McGill, basically from Saul Goodman to Gene, just going back to like Jimmy McGill and just confessing everything from what he did, from everything that happened with like Walter White, because he starts off the same speech that he gave during the like the hearings and all that kind of stuff about Walter White. He starts off that same speech, so you think, oh, he's gonna like try and manipulate and try and like get his way out of it, but then he just confesses to everything, says that he did it for the money, did it for the thrill, confessed to like what happened with Chuck and just everything. So he accepted his fate, he accepted responsibility, and it was really nice to see. So I felt like all of that just came down to just a really nice like ending sequence. And the final couple of scenes with the prison and Kim visiting him, having that last cigarette, saying goodbye to each other, the whole like bus scene with all the prisoners yelling "Better Call Saul," that it just, everything about the finale just felt really nicely wrapped up and was really nicely done. Even forgot to mention about in the last like few episodes, you even get like scenes with Jesse and Walter in that caravan scene. Of course, like Jesse looks so much older now, so they had to like use shadows to like make him look younger, and Walter White just slips right back in. Bryan Cranston, sorry, just slips right back into like Walter White. It was really nice to see his like them again. It was really nice to see Breaking Bad again. You get to see like Jesse talking to Kim about how if he can trust Saul, and Kim's just completely like disconnected with Saul. You have in the finale too, you have Mike and Walter having a discussion with Saul. Saul basically asking Mike, "Oh, if you had a time machine, where would you go back?" Asking the same question with Walter, and just Walter snapping on him and asking about regrets. It was really like an emotional like sequence, really nice like scenes, just like seeing all these characters again, talking about regrets, talking about everything that happened. Everything just tied up so nicely, all the loose ends from Breaking Bad, everything just came about so nicely. It really was such a great finale and really great end to the show. So overall, I would hands down say this is probably the best prequel to a show I've ever seen. The writing was just top notch. Everything tied so well together. The storyline, the character plots, the story arcs, everything was just really well written. You just enjoy everything about it, from like the earlier seasons where it's just lawyer based to then the drug storyline. Everything just came well so nicely. It was a great show, a great season. The Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, it's something you're not going to see again, and it was something that I'm so glad I got to witness, because I absolutely love Breaking Bad, I absolutely love Better Call Saul, and it was just a really great show. So if you have seen the show, if you have seen Breaking Bad, if you've seen Better Call Saul, what did you think about it? What's your favorite season? What did you think overall? Let me know down in the comment section below. This is my take and this is my thoughts of it, from season 1 to season 6. Thank you so much for watching though. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos here on the channel. Again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support. This is YK Reviews. Peace.